Holiday ads distract us from the present, and I'm not buying it. Welcome. This is a channel where I make fun of marketing, and today it's all about holiday ads. And genuinely, I love the holiday season, I really do, but unfortunately, from the perspective of brands and the marketing professionals they hire, any naturally existing positive association is an opportunity to inject products and brand messaging, forever coloring those associations in the minds of regular people. And for many years, brands have granted themselves the permission to co-opt winter holidays, specifically Christmas because it's the most profitable, for their own benefit. The iconography and the conceptual standbys of the holiday season have been milked dry at this point, and these elements have been repeated to the point of near invisibility. Certain companies have also, in essence, claimed certain holiday imagery as part of their brand identity, just short of like actually trademarking this imagery. But we'll talk about that more a little bit later. Believe it or not, I actually think that advertising using holiday cliches can potentially have a positive impact, but that depends entirely on how the cliches are deployed and who is deploying them. But that's just a side note. I'm going to analyze flagship holiday ads from 3 of the most profitable and powerful companies in the modern world: Coca-Cola, Apple, and Amazon. And in my view, despite their heartwarming tones and wholesome, inoffensive messaging, these ads say nothing of substance, while also distracting from real-world problems, including controversies directly associated with the companies in question. Meanwhile, the ads hope to encourage spending and create or bolster positive associations between their respective brands and the viewers. I'm going to analyze each ad on its own and then talk about the traits and patterns that they all share. So if you're up for some corporate cynicism, come along for the ride. I'll be happy to have you here. Okay, we're starting out with a spot called "The World Needs More Santas." This is from Coca-Cola, and the ad agency behind it is WPP. I'll talk about them a little bit later. So here's a quick summary. We see a cozy, yet also nondescript city occupied exclusively by identical Santas in the typical Santa costume, going about their business. We see the Santas performing little acts of kindness for each other, culminating in one Santa giving a vending machine's last bottle of Coke, in a glass bottle, by the way, not plastic, to another Santa. Then, about halfway through, the scene transitions to real, non-Santa people. We also see the world's cleanest subway train and subway station, I guess, at least the cleanest outside of Japan, or maybe Sweden. I don't know. Sweden's pretty clean. I like Sweden. What else? Typical holiday activities, including mailing packages, and please note that the US Postal Service boxes, which are typically blue, have been recolored here to Coca-Cola red, which I guess means that Coke is like the government in the world of this commercial, or at least the government of this world really loves Coke, which is not exactly that far off from reality. Lastly, a college-aged kid steps off a Coca-Cola freight truck in a residential area, which is its own sort of weird situation, to surprise his family for the holiday. The truck then lights up in what I'm sure is an illegal amount of running lights, and Santa bro leans out the driver's side window. And it ends with the copy, "The world needs more Santas," displayed in 2 very carefully chosen typefaces. Also, apparently Coca-Cola's company tagline is now "Real Magic." Does that make you feel anything? What is that? I'm just imagining the pitch. Real magic, wow. That's it. A few other details. Okay, the song used in this ad is a cover of "Anyone Can Be Santa," which is originally from the Rankin Bass animated classic The Year Without a Santa Claus, the one with Heat Miser and Snow Miser? Is it Snow Miser or Cold Miser? It's gotta be Snow Miser. In that special, Mrs. Claus sings a whole song pretty early on about how she kind of likes dressing up as Santa and that anyone can be Santa, at least in spirit. This cover is performed by the British R&B singer Celeste, and basically all of the top comments on the YouTube upload of this ad are just about the song, not the substance of the ad, not what's happening in the ad, which I think just highlights how generic this ad's imagery and messaging are. Now, of course, plenty of corporate ads, holiday ads, try to avoid explicit associations with one holiday over the other, but that is not the case here. And the most likely reason for that choice is that Coca-Cola basically claimed Santa Claus as a corporate mascot many decades ago. So while Coca-Cola did not invent the red-suited version of Santa that has become the standard, the red suit in certain illustrations of Santa apparently inspired them to start putting Santa in their various holiday ads. This ad, in fact, directly references one of the much older Santa Coke print ads, and at best, I think this is an incredibly uncreative marketing decision, and at worst, it is the appropriation of a cultural icon, and from a slightly different perspective, a religious icon as well. The emphasis on these cute little acts of kindness is nothing new for holiday advertising or advertising in general, and we will be seeing it in both of the other ads I'll be talking about today, but I think it's worth considering the function of this trope beyond the surface level value of just generating a feel-good tone. For one, this tactic can be used to draw attention and scrutiny away from the real-world harm that is being done by corporations. And in fact, in his political art criticism essay, Art and Ecotopia, Ben Davis describes one interpretation of this tactic. This is going to be kind of a long quote, but I think that it's all relevant here. The resulting culture of thought leaders and change makers rests on reframing systemic problems in feel-good, bite-sized ways. Personalize the political. Your job is to help the public see problems as personal and individual dramas rather than collective and systemic ones, and be constructively actionable. Don't focus on anything that requires too much in the way of collective action. So, while the Coke ad does not directly address or reference large-scale world issues of any kind, instead focusing on this like fantasy land of Coke, I guess, I feel that the inclusion of the above-mentioned rules of personalize the political and be constructively actionable do serve the function of distracting viewers from the very tangible problems that Coca-Cola as a company is worsening. For example, in 2022, Coca-Cola was identified as the worst plastic polluter in the world. And while their official website tries very hard to give the impression that the company is doing everything it possibly can to promote sustainability, actual progress, at least along certain metrics, has been basically non-existent. All of Coca-Cola's sustainability promises are undercut by their record of greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, here is a chart of their emissions from 2010 to 2022. That's flat enough to eat your dinner off of. So when that final bit of copy comes onto the screen, the world needs more Santas, it doesn't really hit the way that they wanted it to. For one thing, it comes across as moralizing to me. It feels like Coca-Cola is making this definitive statement about how the world should be, and returning to the quote from earlier, a Santa, in this context, is an individual making small, isolated contributions to society. There is not even a hint of larger problems, just really little ones, and therefore, only small, individual solutions are needed. Before moving on, I also want to comment on WPP, the ad agency responsible for this commercial. To start, this agency's annual revenue in 2022 was $17.8 billion, making them one of the biggest agencies in the world, if not the biggest. Full stop. Amusingly, the agency's website has an entire section on sustainability efforts, and for one, I feel that regardless of the company's own emissions and environmental impact, choosing to work with a brand like Coca-Cola makes them entirely complicit in their clients' impact as well. Clearly, the environmental harm being done by Coca-Cola was not a deal breaker for WPP, which makes their sustainability chatter seem a bit disingenuous. But I also wanted to point out this copy that they have at the top of their sustainability page on their website. Our clients must balance a complex set of social and environmental challenges with changing consumer expectations and constant technological development. So, okay, it kind of sounds like a catch-all, like cop-out. It's like they're saying, oh, you know, it's really hard. Okay, it's all very complex. You know, don't expect the companies we work with to actually do things or make progress. But they continue. While challenging, today's landscape also offers major opportunities to create new markets for more inclusive and sustainable products and services. This is very funny to me. They're basically saying, okay, sustainability may require certain cutbacks, which means less money, we get that, but there are also opportunities for making more money through our sustainability efforts, or maybe just branding something as sustainable, I guess. They just can't help themselves. Everything, absolutely everything has to be reframed as a way to make more money. This is supposedly a web page about sustainability commitments, but it's like they're saying that they're most committed to revenue. At the end of the day, even in spite of all its contradictions and cliches, I don't think that this Coke ad even does a good job of selling Coke. It feels like the fulfillment of an obligation. They just needed to have a holiday ad for this year. So here you go. People like Santa, people like that old Rankin Bass short, maybe they'll recognize the song. Our messaging sounds inclusive. That's big right now. Check. We're done here. And while I definitely understand the impulse to do only the bare minimum at your job, I am sure that this team at WPP walked away with comically large wheelbarrows worth of cash after wrapping this one up, all in exchange for the bare minimum. All right, we move on now to an ad that was actually a success, I think, at least in terms of online viewership. The Coke ad, for example, is currently sitting at around, I think, 800K on YouTube, but this Apple ad that we're about to talk about, which they have the gall to label as a film, is at, I think, 16 million views, at least at the time of writing. I would call that successful. Also, of the 3 ads being featured in this video, I think that Fuzzy Feelings is the most carefully considered. The team here, including whoever decides like which production companies and creatives it is okay for Apple to be seen working with, they did good work here. Now, don't misunderstand. It's still not good. It is still an ad, which means that it is inherently without a soul and represents nothing more than an attempt to make corporate communication feel like authentic, artistic human expression. I also think that it ends up feeling completely hollow by the end, and it relies on the same standard, well-worn tropes of agnostic holiday atmosphere as any other holiday ad. Before we really dig in, I should summarize this ad very quickly. So it starts with a stop-motion clip of a schlubby man just being a jerk and then getting promptly humiliated in public. Once again, we are in some kind of nondescript locale. We see small businesses in the background, which, if this was an even slightly desirable part of this town, probably wouldn't be able to afford the rent. We zoom out to look at the scene through the screen of an iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is a cell phone that retails for $1,199 US. This is then revealed to be the passion project of, I guess, like a 30-something woman, I'm bad at guessing age, who has just this terrible soul-sucking office job, as well as this incredibly chic, like boho attic studio space with lots of plants. Obviously, this character is the ad's target audience. We then realize that this stop-motion character she's been working with is clearly based on her aggressively frumpy manager / boss. We get a montage of the boss being a petty jerk in real life, which prompts the woman to humiliate and basically torture the model version of the boss. But what's this? The boss is then shown to have just a stupid, miserable life where he knits stockings for his employees and eats soup in a restaurant without anyone bothering him. So Animator Woman gives the model boss a model dog who looks kind of creepy. There's something about that dog doesn't quite work for me. Anyway, and she continues to portray the model boss in like more positive scenes, which then leads the woman eventually to eat lunch with the man in the real world. And the ending copy here is, "You make the holidays." It's no secret that Apple is and has been in a codependent relationship with creatives for decades now. Apple needs creatives, as the brand has failed to become the dominant force in business or academic computing. Creatives, on the other hand, only think that they need Apple. Creatives' friends keep telling them, you could do so much better, and the creatives just shoot back over a freshly thawed scone, you don't understand what we have together. Apple gets me like no one else does. I think that aspiring creatives, especially relatively young ones, get hung up on the idea that they need certain products to go pro, even just in their minds, even just to feel validated in their career aspirations. This is very much the effect and incentive for Apple's unending stream of celebrity endorsements and product placement efforts in popular shows and movies. But I'm happy to tell you, if you are an aspiring creative, you do not need any kind of Apple product to do any kind of creative work. There are always alternatives, and most of them are less expensive, which is very important if you don't have money. I think it's only after purchasing a very expensive Apple product that an aspiring creative realizes it's not actually going to help them accomplish their goals, at least until they're presented with yet another product that makes the exact same argument as before. It's a cycle that I think has been described incredibly well by Michael of a channel called Play PM, where he talks about alternatives to really flashy music equipment.
Time after time, gear manufacturers release new hardware gears, and then they send them out to really creative influencers just to trigger your purchase, and then make more money. And after you bought that gear, doodled around a little bit, realizing that you're still not good at making music, and thinking about quitting on it, they release another new gear.
So it's not new for Apple to act like they are the world's greatest gift to creatives. And for this ad, the inclusion of stop-motion filmmaking from an established artist named Anna Montzaris basically serves as a suit of armor, I think. I mean, for one, the use of stop-motion here to a general audience probably evokes the same Rankin Bass holiday specials that the Coke ad was referencing through its music, but it also repels criticism. Why would anyone want to attack this singular artist or any of the artists who worked on the stop motion stuff? Just seems like a nasty thing to do. You know, it's almost like Apple saying, hey, you better not speak ill of this advertisement. It's got real heart. And don't worry, like I'm not gonna go after Montzaris. She's an artist just making a living. And taking money away from Apple is a good thing. But at the same time, any artist willing to cash corporate checks is opening themselves up to a certain amount of potential criticism. That's just part of the deal. And even just in terms of visibility, you're kind of making a deal with the devil here. Because while I'm sure that Montzaris got a very nice payout for working on this project, in exchange, Apple gets to now associate itself with a creative aesthetic that I'm sure Montzaris has spent many years developing. And in a way, they paid to co-opt her artistic voice. And unfortunately, because Apple is so big and because this ad has already been viewed so widely for literally millions of people, this look and this style will forever be associated with a tech company, not with the artist who created it. In fact, in a stroke that I find downright disrespectful and kind of inexplicable, the ad itself and even the video description of the YouTube upload just fail to mention Montzaris in any way. And with that in mind, the whole ad starts to take on this weird new dimension. Here is an original artistic work that has been completely divorced from the artist. And for one, you know, the work is no doubt now Apple's legal property. But beyond that, Montzaris and I assume a small team of animators and crew who helped produce all this stuff have now been replaced by Apple's image of the ideal Apple consumer. On a lighter but also more sinister note, does anyone else get the impression that the boss guy here is like a version of John Hodgman's PC guy character from the old Apple commercials? In both cases, I mean, he's meant to represent the opposite of Apple's target audience, but there are also just too many visual similarities. It almost feels like weird, prolonged revenge, the same kind as we see, you know, the ad's protagonist performing before her big turnaround. In fact, it's like years later, the PC guy has fallen into his inevitably empty life, while the new incarnation of Mac is generous enough, big enough, to offer her pity, her friendship, and maybe, perhaps, her love? We'll have to wait until next year to find out. There's also a potential thread here concerning issues of class and power in the workplace, but I think it's time to move on. This video is getting very, very long. Also, this ad uses the George Harrison song, Isn't It a Pity?, which probably isn't as good as the Nina Simone cover of the same song, but we'll set that aside for now as well. But hey, guess who else is trying to cash in on Beatles nostalgia this year? Not just the Beatles, they will be doing that too. Joyride, the official Amazon holiday ad. I can say right now, this is the weakest of the three. It's just not anything special in any way. And it's kind of funny given that Amazon is also considered the most valuable company in the world. Maybe their lack of effort here is just a symptom of their lack of interest in swaying public opinion, given their death grip on online retail. Summary: some elderly women are sitting on a park bench watching children who are sledding down a hill very slowly. I think that the women are supposed to look sad, but to my understanding, old age is just so painful from moment to moment that their mood might not have anything to do with sledding. I don't know. The tallest woman orders seat cushions from Amazon and brings them, still in the Amazon box, to her friends. Also, I hope that the tall woman didn't visit that product page multiple times, because Amazon would have surely raised the price on her. Also, very telling, we don't see a price in the shot of the woman looking at this product on her phone. Seems like a very strategic exclusion. Okay, sorry, back to the story. So they go sledding on like the cheapest sleds I have ever seen. And they have helmets now. I don't know if they ordered those or if maybe the children loaned those out to them. Mid-ride, they flash back to sledding in the olden days in a locale that apparently had a much warmer color temperature. The ending copy is, "Joy is shared," which is nothing? Like, what do you mean? Sometimes it is, I guess. Like, are you just saying that it's good to have friends? Is that what the copy is supposed to communicate? There's no idea here. I don't sense a vision behind the scenes. It's somehow more empty than the other ads, I guess. What's more empty than empty? Amazon? Actually, that's a better tagline. So of course, the use of the song here, which is In My Life, released by the Beatles back in 1965, makes sense in terms of the target audience. You know, someone who was like 16 years old back in 65 would now be about 74. So we're definitely in the ballpark for the target audience here. And it's worth talking about that target audience for a bit, because just some brief research showed that about 80% of Amazon's customers, at least here in the States, are between 18 and 54 years old. So we can assume that customers over the age of 54 represent a relatively small portion of the current customer base. And so it makes sense to try to appeal to members of that older demographic with your one major holiday ad. You know, it still works for other demographics too, I think. Like if younger viewers see this ad, they can still be expected to have a generally positive response, right? Like, look how wholesome. look how sweet. It defaults to that cultural impression of old people are cute. Another tangent, but that's a concept that has started to bother me because I think labeling something as cute removes power, and when you call elderly people cute, it also undermines the sense that they still have dignity and agency and imperfections, but some other time. Another note on the song here, it is not the licensed original track. This is a comparatively cheap cover, because all covers are cheaper than licensing the original song. It's a cheap cover played in a slow piano arrangement, which is a style that occasional YouTuber Tantacruel has appropriately labeled auto-sad in reference to how this style of music functions in contemporary television. You hear slow music, you know you're either supposed to feel sad or maybe inspired. Also, my little joke about Amazon raising prices on this fictional woman here touches on something larger, returning to that idea of holiday ads distracting their audiences from real-world controversies and problems that these companies are directly involved with. It's only been a couple of months at this point since the Federal Trade Commission, alongside 17 different state-level attorneys general, sued Amazon for allegedly maintaining an illegal monopoly. Here's a quote right from the FTC website. The FTC and its state partners say Amazon's actions allow it to stop rivals and sellers from lowering prices, degrade quality for shoppers, overcharge sellers, stifle innovation, and prevent rivals from fairly competing against Amazon. I would love to have some of those comments overlaid on this ad. Okay, so this has been a pattern in plenty of Amazon ads, not just their holiday ads, but we never see the delivery driver here. And that is very much a conscious choice. As plenty of other folks have talked about already, modern day consumption inherently alienates consumers from the people and the processes that actually produce the products that they buy. So with that in mind, it's natural for Amazon to want to exclude the people, not just who make the products in the first place, but also the people who sort the packages and deliver them to your doorstep. Because you're not supposed to think about those people. You're not supposed to have any human interaction at all. You're just supposed to think, oh wow, free shipping. And it's so fast. And given how important warehouse staff and drivers are to Amazon's business model, especially during the holidays, their exclusion continues to feel gross and genuinely disrespectful. Also, thinking back to the FTC's comment about degrading quality for shoppers, an unintentional side effect of this ad is comparing the modern day sleds with the wooden sleds of the flashback. Anybody who lives in like a snowy area can tell you that if those plastic sleds get left outside at all, there's a good chance they'll get wet from the melted snow, or maybe there's a thaw and then it freezes again overnight, which makes it incredibly easy for the sleds to crack. And then, you know, what good are they after that? They just end up on the pile of plastic Coke bottles, I guess. So Amazon here has unintentionally highlighted major shifts in manufacturing and the decline in the quality of mass market products. And in the process, they also highlight their own role in those shifts. But hey, a couple of broken sleds probably means another order for Amazon. So it all works out. In terms of what these ads all have in common, I think that some of the traits are very obvious. You know, the use of standard holiday imagery and tropes abound. There's nothing surprising there. Also not surprising is how the ads just ignore the state of the world, and I'm not even talking about ignoring just company-related controversies. They manage to ignore all global issues simultaneously in favor of pretending that the holidays, or maybe that their brands, exist outside of all that. I think that a more interesting trait of these ads is that none of their characters actually speak, or at least we never hear them speaking at all. It's one of those things I don't really notice until I stop to think about it, and I'm guessing that's because this has been the standard for very self-serious advertisements for many years now. Brands like to prioritize emotional music, editing, and dreamy cinematography over dialogue or even voiceover in most cases. And if there is voiceover, it has to be as lofty and as general as possible. So in one sense, it is expected to see a bunch of silent characters in these ads, but it also feels odd. It makes the characters come across even more like puppets. And sure, I mean, that's what they are. That is the function they serve in the ads. But it is in the interest of brands to at least give the impression that we're looking at real people, and they don't accomplish that here. Overall, these ads are unimpressive to me. I guess that goes without saying. There's nothing about them that is uniquely 2023. They don't feel rooted in any specific time. And as I've talked about here, they don't seem to have anything unique to say. Can you imagine feeling nostalgic for some of these ads 20 years from now? Like there's nothing to grab onto. And of course, they are all completely invested in maintaining the status quo. Everything's fine. Please continue to buy our products. If there's any positive takeaway here, it's that we seem to be reaching a point when the weight of the real world is too significant to ignore. The weight of the real world is too significant to ignore via wishful corporate escapism. Two of these ads just aren't popular, for one thing, and I will happily argue that the only reason for the popularity of the Apple ad is the inclusion of cutesy stop-motion animation, which makes it even stranger that Apple doesn't credit the artist in or around the ad. Sorry to come back to it, but that honestly blows my mind. I would be very interested to hear suggestions for how these ads could be improved, or even how the associated companies could substantiate their otherwise hollow messaging that they're trying to capitalize on. Massive charitable contributions sounds like a pretty good option, but I guess that would ultimately amount to charity washing, not to mention a hefty tax write-off, I'm assuming. Feel free to leave suggestions below. And now, here at the end of the video, with all of the cynicism out of the way, I would like to wish you a very happy holiday season. Regardless of whether you celebrate any winter holidays at all, I hope you find plenty of time to be lazy and take care of yourself. It's the most natural thing that we can do when the weather starts to get cold. Also, for the diehards who are still watching, thanks for being here. This feels like a real channel now. Maybe we can talk about some of the changes at another time. But this is actually a relatively quick in-between video while I work on something that's much more dense and depressing, and will also probably have a much longer runtime. So thank you so much for your patience in the meantime. Until next time, take it easy.